Alright, in this video we want to talk about something called the midpoint formula, and the idea is probably fairly intuitive to you. The midpoint of two numbers, so let's just take, as an example, we could take the numbers, let's say 8 and 10. If I said, suppose I had the numbers 8 and 10, find the midpoint of those, which means the number that's in the middle, probably you'd be able to tell that it's 9. Okay, if it's a bigger number though, if it's 8 and like 64, it's not as obvious what the midpoint is. The way that we got 9 really is we just found the average of those two. If you add 8 plus 10, you get 18. Divided by 2 is 9. So if you wanted to find the midpoint of 8 and 64, you would add them. Divide by 2, that's another way of finding the average, and it turns out to be 36. So if you're asked to do this with coordinates, which we are for numbers 1 and 2 here, we would follow the same reasoning. Okay, and here's the formula right here. The formula is average of the x's right there, and then here's the average of the y's. You add y1 just means your first y coordinate, y2 means your second. So you add those and you divide by 2. So let's find the midpoint right here. NP will stand for midpoint, so 1 plus negative 2, and then we have to divide that by 2. And the same thing with the y, so 0 plus 2, and we have to divide that by 2. So the final result right here will be 1 plus negative 2 is negative 1, and then negative 1 over 2 is negative 1/2, and then right here that's going to be 2 over 2, which is 1. And if you want to see a picture of this, it's not a bad idea just to check. So 1, 0 is the point right there. That's this point. Negative 2, 2 is the point right there. And so if you connect them, there's your line, and we want to verify that this is the middle point. So negative 1/2, 1 would be about right there. And that does look like the middle of the point. All right, number 2 is a little bit harder. So we are given an endpoint and a midpoint, and we want to find the other endpoint. So these are endpoints right here. These 2 points, the end parts of the line. So for this, it would be a good idea to kind of draw the picture, and then we can use the formula just in a slightly different version of it. So let's draw the picture first of all. So 6, 1. 6, 1 is going to put us, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6, 1 right there. So we took care of that. And then the midpoint is 0, 6. So it's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the midpoint right there. So these are connected, and then we need to have some other endpoint over here for which the green one, actually let me change the color here, it'll be blue. This blue one is the midpoint, and this right here is the endpoint. EP stands for endpoint. So how will we do that? Well, we already know the formula up here. We know that midpoint equals the average of the x's plus the average of the y's. And we are given the midpoint. We're told the midpoint is 0, 6. And we know that that has to equal the x-coordinate of the first endpoint. So we know that the first endpoint has an x-coordinate of 6 plus the x-coordinate of the second endpoint. We don't know that yet, though, so let's call that x2. And similarly, the 6 right here, the y-coordinate, must be the average or the midpoint of this endpoint 1 plus some unknown second endpoint. Again, the second one is this one up here. We don't know what that is. We just know that it has to give us a midpoint of 0, 6. So now what we can do is basically set up two different equations right here. The first one will be this. The first one will tell us that 0 is equal to this thing right here. It's equal to the average of our 2 endpoints, and we don't know what that other endpoint is. So right now we can multiply both sides by 2. So that means 0 equals 6 plus x sub 2, and then we'll solve for that by subtracting 6. And we'll get x sub 2 equals negative 6. And that looks pretty much right. 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like this point, whatever it is going to be somewhere at negative 6. Okay, we need to find the y-coordinate though, so we'll do that next. And I encourage you to try to pause the video and set up the equation and solve it. So our equation is going to be 6. That's our y-coordinate, is going to equal this right here. The average of 1 and some other number that we don't know yet. We'll do the same thing. We'll multiply by 2. And then we'll have 6 times 2, which gives us 12. And then when we solve that for y2, we would get y2 is equal to 11. So this, not going to be quite drawn to scale, but 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's that purple right there is our second endpoint, and sure enough, it does look like it fits that picture. It fits with what the midpoint that we should get. So that's how we use the midpoint formula.